PlayStation 1 horror games were great. Nowadays, the indie horror scene is full of games inspired by the first Silent Hill or Resident Evil. And then came Puppet Combo, my favorite indie dev, and combined the PS1 graphics with the old VHS looks, and it looked awesome. Altoag, most people turn it off for some reason. I'm also making a similar horror game called The Mines of Balan, and in this video, I'll show you how to achieve a similar look for your game. First, I'm bad at 3D modeling, so I can't really give advice on that, except to use the decimate modifier to reduce the poly count on your models. But don't worry, there are tons of PSX games that use more modern graphics, like the Fears to Phantom series. So, in this video we'll use 3 freely available shaders from GodotShaders.com. As you can see, I have this basic scene set up with no shaders applied. Here's how it looks now. I got the building model from a free asset pack, and I made the soldier model by modifying a free human character asset. You can watch my devlogs if you're interested in how I did that. In the project settings, it's recommended to use a lower resolution. I use 320 by 240. I think the original PS1 used the same resolution. Then set the stretch mode to viewport, so it first renders the game in the given resolution, which is 320 x 240 in my case, then scales it up to fit the player's monitor. If you set it to canvas items, it will first scale everything up, and then render it, which will give you a much sharper look, which is fine, but that doesn't look very retro. So first, let's fix my ground, because it looks horrible. Click on the material, click on sampling, and change it to nearest, so it won't look that blurry anymore. Then, under the UV1, you can change the scale. Adjust it however you'd like, until it looks good. First, let's use this shader to give the models a jittering and warping effect. The PS1 models didn't have proper UV mapping, so the textures were bugging like this every time. You don't have to implement it if you don't like it, of course, but I think it looks cool. I already have the shader here, but if you don't, then right-click on a folder, create new resource, and select shader. Double-click on the shader, delete everything in it, and paste the code from Godot Shaders. But as I said, I already have the shader, so I'll delete this one. Then right-click on the model, and check Editable Children, so you can edit the mesh and textures. Click on this arrow, then make it unique. Then do the same with the material. Now let's drag our shader to the material. As you can see, our texture now disappeared, but the model now has this jittering effect. To get our texture back, click on the material, click on Shader Parameters, and drag and drop our texture to the albedo. You can adjust how much jittering you want. You can barely see the effect right now, because the model is not animated, so it's static. But if I open this scene from my game, you can see the jittering effect on my animated soldiers. You can ignore the subtitles. Then of course, we can do the same with our building. You can turn this strange warping effect on or off with the Affine Mapping checkbox. Right now it looks great, but we haven't added our CRT and VHS effect yet. So create a shader and copy the code from Godot Shaders. I already have it here. Add a canvas layer to the scene, and add a color rect to our canvas layer. Make sure the color rect fits the whole screen. Now let's drag our CRT shader to the Rex material. You can drag the Godot icon here to see the effects. In the shader parameters, there are tons of options. You can adjust the sliders and values to achieve the look you want. But always make sure to check the overlay option if you're using a color rect. You can adjust the CRT scan lines and its width. I usually set the grill opacity to 0. Then you can customize these rolls, including their speed, size, variation, etc. Then you can adjust the noise or film grain effect. You also have a slider for the chromatic aberration, but you should use a really small value, like 0.02. You can also adjust a warp effect, but I don't recommend using it together with the scan lines. I'll show you why in a minute. You can make the edges transparent, for example if you want to use this on a 3D TV model, not as an overlay. And there are also options for the vignette. So if I start the game now, you can see that my CRT scan lines are messed up. That's because of the warp effect, so let's turn it off. Now the scan lines are way too big, so we should make the shader's resolution higher. I use 8000 by 6000. I'll also reduce the noise. So this is how it looks now. Most of the time you want to turn the rolls off, as it can be pretty annoying, or at least make it adjustable in the options menu. And now comes our final shader, for the dithering and color limitation effects. Import the shader, then add a subviewport container to the scene. Make sure it fits the screen. Then add a subviewport as a child object under the container. Then drag the post-processing shader to our container's material. There are two adjustable effects, one for the dithering, and one for limiting the number of colors visible on the screen. Then drag everything from your scene under the subviewport as a child object. Make sure your subviewport's resolution is the same as your main viewport resolution. So 320 by 240 in my case. You can of course limit the colors as much as you'd like. It can get really dark if you use a low value. I'm sure it can be much more scarier with the CRT effect turned off. But I usually just use 16, which is the maximum value. Then there's also the dithering. If I turn off the CRT effect, you can see it better. Yeah, those dots on the sky are the dithers. So that's it for this video. I hope you found it useful. If you did, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye.